This is a message from a viewer named Gerald, and when I finished reading it, I sat in silence for a long time. It is not your typical Thailand scam story. There is no bar girl who vanishes with a broken heart and an empty bank account. There is no sob story about a man who lost everything to love and woke up one morning with nothing but regret. No, this story is different. This story is about a man who saw the trap, recognized every wire and trigger mechanism, stepped into it anyway, and then turned the entire apparatus against the hunter who had set it. Gerald Whitmore was 61 years old when he landed in Pattaya, a retired postal supervisor from Tucson, Arizona, twice divorced, father to 2 adult children who had learned long ago not to expect much from him. He arrived in Thailand, carrying the quiet desperation of a man who had spent 34 years sorting other people's mail, delivering other people's love letters and birthday cards and news of deaths and births and promotions, only to discover that retirement felt less like freedom and more like a slow fade into irrelevance. Back home in Arizona, Gerald had become invisible, the kind of invisible that happens gradually, so slowly you do not notice it, until one day you realize that weeks have passed without anyone saying your name. He had become that guy at the end of the bar nursing the same beer for 2 hours, watching sports he did not care about just to avoid the suffocating silence of his empty apartment. What the scammers saw when they looked at Gerald was a lonely American retiree, easy prey, another walking ATM with a pension and a desperate need to feel wanted. They saw a mark who would hand over money and then be too ashamed to tell anyone what happened. What they did not see was the 8 years Gerald had spent in the Office of Inspector General, investigating internal fraud for the United States Postal Service. They did not see the hundreds of cases he had built, the criminals he had helped put away, the patterns of deception he had learned to recognize, like a musician learns to read sheet music. They saw a mark. They were catastrophically wrong. But before we get to the twist, before we see how a 61-year-old man from the Arizona desert dismantled a professional scam operation with nothing but a smartphone and 3 decades of investigative instinct, you need to understand how close he came to becoming just another victim. You need to understand how seductive the trap can be, how even someone trained to see through lies can want so badly to believe that they walk willingly into the cage. Because if Gerald Whitmore, with all his training and all his suspicion and all his years of watching people lie, could be drawn this deep into the web, then what chance does an ordinary person have? While you are watching, let me know where you are tuning in from. I always check the comments. And if these stories resonate with you, there is a little super thanks button below. Totally optional, but it helps me keep telling stories like this that most people are too ashamed to share. If you've been enjoying the stories I tell, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. My name is Gerald Whitmore. Most people call me Jerry, though honestly, not that many people call me anything these days. And I need to tell you about the time I let myself become a mark because I wanted to believe that life still had something to offer a man like me. To understand how I ended up handing over 145,000 baht to a con artist in Pattaya, Thailand, you need to understand what my life looked like in the summer of 2022. I was 61 years old. I had just completed my 34th and final year with the United States Postal Service, the last 8 of which I spent in the Office of Inspector General investigating internal fraud, package theft, embezzlement, mail tampering, the quiet crimes that happen when people think no one is watching. I had a pension of roughly $4,200 a month. Social Security would kick in eventually, adding another $1,800 or so. On paper, I was comfortable. More than comfortable. I had what most Americans would consider a secure retirement. I had a small apartment in Tucson that I had moved into after my second divorce. 700 square feet of beige carpet and white walls, and furniture I had bought at a going out of business sale because I could not bring myself to care about aesthetics anymore. The refrigerator hummed. The air conditioning cycled on and off. The clock on the microwave blinked 12:00 because I had never bothered to set it after a power outage 3 months earlier, and I had absolutely nothing to wake up for in the morning. Retirement was supposed to be the reward. 34 years of showing up before dawn, 34 years of doing the job right when it would have been easier to cut corners. 34 years of watching other people's lives pass through my hands in the form of letters and packages and bills and wedding invitations and condolence cards. I thought, when I finally punched out for the last time, shook hands with my supervisor, ate the obligatory sheet cake in the break room while everyone pretended to be sad to see me go, I thought I would feel free. Instead, I felt erased. Do you know what it is like to realize that the world does not need you anymore? That the systems you served for 3.5 decades will continue humming along without the slightest hiccup? That the people you worked beside, people you saw every day for years, will forget your name within months because your replacement will be sitting in your chair and answering to your title? I found myself sleeping later and later each morning because there was no reason to get up. I would lie in bed listening to the traffic sounds from the street below. Counting the minutes until noon felt like a reasonable time to officially start my day. Then I would shuffle to the kitchen, make coffee I did not really want, and stare at the wall wondering how I was supposed to fill the next 30 years of my life. I became that guy. The one at the end of the bar at Mulligan's Pub on 4th Street, nursing the same Budweiser for 2 hours, pretending to watch whatever game was on the television above the bottles, because the alternative was sitting alone in my apartment listening to nothing but my own thoughts and the refrigerator hum. The bartender knew my name. That felt like something. One person in the world who said Jerry when I walked in, who asked how I was doing even though neither of us expected an honest answer. I ate dinner at the same diner 3 times a week, a place called Rosie's off the highway that had been there since the 70s and still served coffee in those thick ceramic mugs that never seemed to get fully clean. The waitress, Maria, knew my order. Patty melt, no onions, fries, coffee. She would bring it without me asking, and sometimes we would exchange a few words about the weather or her grandkids or how the Diamondbacks were doing. That small recognition, being known, being remembered, was enough to make me feel human. At least for the 20 minutes it took to eat my dinner. My 2 kids from my first marriage, Daniel and Sophie, called me on Father's Day and Christmas. Sometimes they remembered my birthday, usually a few days late, with an apologetic text message. I could not blame them. I had not been a great father. I had been present in the sense that I lived in the same house. I came home at night. I sat at the dinner table, but I was not really there, not in the ways that mattered. I was thinking about cases, thinking about work, thinking about everything except the 2 small humans who were growing up right in front of me and who needed more than a distracted man eating his pot roast in silence. I worked overtime when I should have been at their school plays. I missed Daniel's first Little League home run because I was interviewing a suspect in a mail theft ring. I promised Sophie I would take her to get ice cream after her dance recital and then forgot. Simply forgot, because a case file had consumed my attention. By the time I realized what I had lost, it was already gone. My first wife, Karen, left me in 1998 after 12 years. She said, I cared more about the job than the family. She said she felt like a single mother even though she was married. She said she needed a partner, not a roommate who occasionally showed up to sleep. She was right. I was too proud to admit it at the time, but she was absolutely right. My second wife, Patricia, lasted 3 years before she figured out the same thing. Some people do not learn from their mistakes. Some people just keep making the same ones in new contexts. By the time I retired, I had exactly what I'd earned: a pension, an empty apartment, a handful of acquaintances who might notice if I disappeared, and a crushing awareness that I had traded my entire life for a gold watch that did not even keep accurate time and a sheet cake I did not eat. That was when my old friend Mike Chen told me about Thailand. Mike had been going to Pattaya for years. We had worked together in the 90s, before I transferred to the Inspector General's office, and we had stayed loosely in touch. Birthday emails, the occasional phone call when one of us was feeling nostalgic. He called me in July, 3 months after my retirement, and asked how I was doing. I told him the truth, which surprised both of us. I told him I was struggling, that retirement felt less like freedom and more like being forgotten, that I did not know what to do with myself. You need to get out of there, he said. Come to Thailand. I am going in September for 3 months. You should come with me. He showed me pictures on a video call. Beautiful beaches with water so blue it looked fake. Ancient temples rising gold against the sky. Street markets overflowing with food I had never seen before. And yes, he was honest about the other stuff too. The nightlife, the bars that lined certain streets, the women who made lonely Western men feel like kings. I was not looking for that, I told myself. I just wanted to feel alive again. I wanted to go somewhere I had never been. Somewhere completely different from the beige sameness of my Tucson existence. Somewhere people did not look through me like I was already a ghost. I booked a 90-day trip using my visa exemption. American citizens can enter Thailand without a visa for up to 90 days. I told myself it was just an extended vacation, a chance to see the world, a reward for 34 years of service to the United States government. But deep down, in the honest places I tried not to visit, I knew the truth. I was running away from a life that had stopped making sense. I was hoping that somewhere on the other side of the planet, 14 time zones away from my empty apartment and my empty days, I might find a version of myself that still mattered. I landed in Bangkok on September 15th, 2022. The heat hit me like a physical force when I stepped outside Suvarnabhumi Airport. 92 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity that must have been close to 100%. My shirt was soaked through within 3 minutes. The air smelled like exhaust and jasmine and something frying in oil, and the faint undercurrent of tropical decay that I would come to associate with Southeast Asia. Mike had given me instructions. Take the airport bus to Ekamai Station. From there, catch a coach to Pattaya. 3 hours on a comfortable air-conditioned bus through flat green countryside dotted with factories and housing developments, and the occasional golden spire of a temple rising above the tree line. I did as he said. I was 61 years old, and I had barely traveled outside North America. A trip to Vancouver with Karen back in the 90s. A weekend in Tijuana during college that I remembered mostly through a haze of cheap tequila and poor decisions. That was the extent of my international experience. Now I was sitting on a bus in Thailand, watching the landscape scroll past my window, feeling simultaneously terrified and more alive than I had in years. Nothing could have prepared me for Pattaya. The bus dropped me at the North Pattaya bus station as the sun was setting. The sky had turned orange and pink, colors I never saw in the Arizona desert. And the air was thick with the sounds of traffic and music and voices in a language I did not understand. I took a taxi to my hotel, a mid-range place Mike had recommended on Soi Bukkao. The driver spoke enough English to confirm my destination, then spent the entire ride weaving through traffic in ways that would have given me a heart attack back home. Red lights seemed to be suggestions. Lane markings were apparently decorative. Motorcycles appeared from nowhere, squeezing between cars with inches to spare. But we arrived safely, and the hotel was exactly what Mike had described. Clean, air-conditioned. A small balcony overlooking a side street where vendors sold grilled meat on sticks, and the constant parade of humanity flowed past from morning until long after midnight. I dropped my bags in the room and went for a walk. Walking street at night was sensory overload. Neon signs in every color stretching as far as I could see. Music thumping from open bar fronts, each playing something different. The sounds colliding and mixing in the humid air. Women in short dresses calling out to passing men. Tourists from every corner of the world, wandering in groups or alone. Some looking overwhelmed, others moving with the confidence of regulars. The smells hit me in waves. Grilled pork and sauté chicken, exhaust from the motorbikes and bot buses, sweet perfume from the women standing outside the go-go bars. The salt tang of the ocean just a few blocks away. Cooking oil and incense, and cigarette smoke, and something floral I could not identify. And everywhere I went, people smiled at me. A woman selling fruit smiled and offered me a sample of something I had never seen before. A man running a beer bar smiled and waved me toward an empty stool. The lady at a street food stall smiled as she served me a bowl of noodles that cost 40 baht, barely more than $1, and was better than anything I had eaten in years. Back home, I had become invisible, just another old man shuffling through his days, taking up space that nobody wanted him to occupy. But in Pattaya, suddenly I existed. I was seen. People made eye contact. They nodded hello. They wanted my attention, even if that wanting was transactional. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking I was naive, that I did not understand the economic dynamics at play, that every smile had a price tag attached, even if I could not see the numbers. And maybe you are right. But when you have spent years feeling like furniture in your own life, like a ghost haunting spaces you used to belong in, even purchased attention feels like oxygen. Even the illusion of mattering is better than the certainty that you do not. I wandered Pattaya until after midnight that first night. I ate street food from 3 different vendors. I had a beer at a quiet bar where the owner practiced his English with me and told me about his daughter who was studying to be a nurse. I watched the chaos of walking street from a safe distance, an anthropologist observing a foreign culture. I went back to my hotel room, exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than I had been in months. Maybe, I thought as I fell asleep to the sounds of the city outside my window, maybe I could build something here. Maybe Thailand could be the fresh start I was looking for. I had no idea how right I was, or how catastrophically that fresh start would unfold. Over the following weeks, I settled into a rhythm. Mornings I spent at the beach, not the crowded Pattaya beach with its jet skis and vendors and tourists packed shoulder to shoulder, but Jomtien Beach a few kilometers south, where things were quieter and the water was cleaner. I would rent a beach chair for 50 baht, about $1.50, and spend hours reading or watching the fishing boats bob on the horizon, or simply sitting with my thoughts in a way that felt peaceful rather than oppressive. There was a coffee shop near my hotel run by a Thai woman named Kun Noi who had lived in Australia for a decade and spoke perfect English. I became a regular. Every morning, around 10, after I returned from the beach, I would stop in for a coffee and whatever pastry she was serving that day. We talked about everything and nothing. Her life in Melbourne, my career with the Postal Service, how Thailand had changed since she was young, how America had changed since I was young. She was the first real friend I made in Pattaya. Afternoons I explored the city. The temples with their gold spires and intricate carvings, and the smell of incense drifting through quiet courtyards. The markets where you could buy anything from fresh fruit to counterfeit watches to custom-tailored suits. The mall complexes that were air-conditioned, refuges from the relentless heat. I started learning Thai, just the basics at first. Sawadi khrap, hello. Kob hun khrap, thank you. Tau rai khrap, how much? Numbers so I could understand prices without being shown a calculator. The woman who ran the laundry service near my hotel laughed at my pronunciation, but seemed genuinely pleased that I was trying. She corrected me gently, had me repeat words until I got the tones right, gave me candy when I remembered something from the previous lesson. These small interactions sustained me. Being known, being remembered, being treated as a person rather than a problem, to be avoided. Evenings I ate at a restaurant called Oasis, run by an American expat named Jim, who had moved to Thailand 15 years earlier and never looked back. The food was a mix of Thai and Western. The beer was cold, and Jim would sit with me sometimes and tell stories about his life before Pattaya. He had been an accountant in Ohio, married for 20 years, divorced, the kids grown and scattered. He described a trajectory so similar to mine that I felt like I was looking into a possible future. Is it worth it? I asked him once. Leaving everything behind. He thought about it for a long moment. Depends what you left behind, he said. For me, it was. But I had nothing holding me in Ohio. No reason to stay. Here, at least, I feel like I belong somewhere. I understood exactly what he meant. 3 weeks into my trip, I found a massage parlor. The place was called Healing Hands Traditional Thai Massage. Nothing seedy about it. No neon signs. No suspicious curtains. Just a small shop front on a quiet swai with a handful of massage beds separated by thin partitions and a reception desk where an older woman smiled and quoted me prices in Thai. 300 baht for 1 hour. About $9. I said yes. The massage was performed by a woman in her 50s who found knots in muscles I did not know I had. She walked on my back. She twisted my spine in ways that should have been illegal. She pressed her thumbs into pressure points that made me yelp in surprised pain and then melt into relief. I came back 2 days later, then 2 days after that. Traditional Thai massage became part of my routine, a physical anchor in the shapelessness of my retired life. That was when I met Dao. She was not there my first few visits. When she finally appeared, working the reception desk one afternoon, she caught my attention immediately. Dao was 34 years old. She was not the most beautiful woman who worked at Healing Hands, not in the conventional sense. But she had something the others did not, an intelligence behind her eyes that suggested she was evaluating every word I said, a wit that came through even with her limited English, a laugh that sounded genuine rather than performed. She asked me questions that went beyond the usual small talk. Where was I from? Why Arizona? What did I do before I retired? Did I like Thailand so far? What was the hardest part about being here? I found myself answering honestly. I told her about the emptiness of retirement, about feeling invisible back home, about coming to Thailand hoping to find something I could not name. She nodded like she understood. Many men come here looking, she said. Most do not know what they look for, but they know they need something. Do they find it? I asked. Some do, she said. Some just find different problems. I started requesting her as my massage therapist specifically. She was good at her job, skilled with her hands, in a way that suggested years of training, but it was the conversation I looked forward to most. Twice a week became 3 times a week. The massages became longer because we would talk before and after, sometimes for an hour or more. She told me about her life, growing up in Isan, the northeastern region of Thailand, in a village so small it did not appear on most maps. Moving to Pattaya at 22 because there were no jobs at home and her family needed money. A daughter named Bua, who was 7 years old now, living with Dao's mother back in the village, being raised by her grandmother because Dao had to work. The father, she said when I asked, was gone. Not dead, just gone. He left when Bua was a baby. Thai men, she said with a shrug that contained entire volumes of disappointment and acceptance. I told her about my own failures as a father, about Daniel and Sophie and the years I had wasted being present but not there, about my 2 divorces and the empty apartment waiting for me back in Tucson. You are lonely, man, she said. It was not a question. Yes, I admitted. I am. She reached out and touched my hand. Just briefly, just enough to make contact. Lonely is very hard, she said. I know this feeling too. 6 weeks into my stay, Dao and I had dinner together for the first time outside the massage parlor. A quiet restaurant she chose, nowhere near Walking Street. Somewhere the locals ate. She wore a blue dress and had done something different with her hair, and I felt like a teenager on his first date. Nervous, hopeful, aware that I was far too old for this kind of feeling, but not caring. We talked for 3 hours. The food was incredible. Dishes I had never tried before that she ordered for us in rapid Thai. She explained each one. This is from my village. This is my favorite since I was a child. This one you will not like, but you must try. She was right. I did not like the fermented fish paste, but I tried it anyway, and she laughed at the face I made, and that laugh was worth every disgusting moment on my tongue. We did not sleep together that night, or the next week, or the week after that. I am not that kind of woman, she told me when things were clearly heading in a certain direction. I like you, Jerry, but I need to know you are serious, man, not just tourist looking for good time. I told her I was serious. I told her I had not felt this way about anyone in years, maybe decades. She smiled and squeezed my hand. Then we wait, she said. We see if feelings stay or if they disappear like morning fog. By week 8 of my 90-day stay, Dao and I were spending almost every day together. She would come to my hotel after her shift ended, climbing the stairs to my 4th floor room with a plastic bag full of food from the night market. We would eat on my small balcony, watching the street below, talking about everything and nothing. She would tell me about her daughter, showing me photos on her phone, a beautiful girl with her mother's intelligent eyes. She would ask about America, about my life there, about what I missed and what I did not miss. We watched movies on my laptop, Thai films with English subtitles that she paused to explain when the subtitles failed to capture some cultural nuance. We walked along the beach at Jomtien in the evenings, when the heat had broken and the sky turned colors that looked painted by a master artist. We did not sleep together until the 9th week, and when we finally did, it felt like something had shifted in the universe, like some gear had clicked into place that had been misaligned my entire life. Is this what I have been missing? I thought as I held her afterward. Is this what happiness actually feels like? Dao started talking about the future, what it would be like if I stayed in Thailand, if we built something together. She could leave the massage parlor, maybe open a small business, a restaurant perhaps, or a shop selling clothes from her village. We could rent a house somewhere quieter than Pattaya, near a good school for Bua. You could be happy here, she said. We could be happy together. I wanted to believe her. God help me. I wanted to believe her more than I had wanted anything in years. But there was a problem that grew larger with each passing day. My visa was expiring. 11 weeks into my 90-day stay, with just over 2 weeks remaining before I would become an illegal overstayer, panic started to set in. I had researched my options online. The simplest solution was what expats called a visa run. Leave the country, cross into Laos or Cambodia or Malaysia, turn around and come back, get a new entry stamp. But that would only buy me 30 days, not 90, and the rules were getting stricter. Thai immigration was cracking down on foreigners who did too many visa runs. They might start asking questions. They might deny me entry entirely. What I really wanted was a longer-term solution, a retirement visa, something that would let me stay in Thailand legally for a year or more while I figured out what my life was going to look like. But the requirements were daunting. The standard OA retirement visa required either 800,000 baht in a Thai bank account, roughly $23,000 at the current exchange rate, or proof of monthly income of at least 65,000 baht, about $1,900. My pension qualified me for the income requirement, but the paperwork seemed impossibly complicated. Embassy visits in the United States before I even arrived. Notarized documents. Medical certificates proving I did not have certain diseases. Police background checks. Letters from my bank. Photographs in specific sizes. I had not done any of this preparation before coming to Thailand. I had come on impulse, on desperation, on a retirement pension, and a prayer. Now I was staring at the possibility of having to leave, having to go back to Tucson, back to the empty apartment and the bar stool at Mulligan's, and the life that had stopped making sense. Having to leave Dow. I mentioned my visa worries to her one evening as we sat on my balcony watching the sun set behind the buildings. She listened carefully, nodding along, her face showing concern that appeared genuine, and then she said something that changed everything. "My friend," Dow said slowly, "she has a boyfriend. Farang like you. He had the same problem. His visa was expiring, and he did not know what to do." I leaned forward, suddenly alert. "What did he do?" I asked. "He used a special agent," Dow said, "a man who helps foreigners with visa problems. He used to work for immigration, very connected. He knows people who can arrange things." "Arrange things," I repeated. She nodded. My friend's boyfriend got a 1-year retirement visa through him. No problems, no embassy visits. Everything handled here in Thailand. I felt two things simultaneously. The first was hope, the desperate, clutching hope of a man who sees a rope dangling above him just as the water rises toward his chin. The second was suspicion. A small alarm bell, faint but persistent. The kind of alarm that 8 years in fraud investigation had taught me to never ignore. This sounded too good to be true. And in my professional experience, things that sounded too good to be true were exactly that. But Dow seemed so sincere. Her concern seemed so genuine. And the alternative, leaving Thailand, leaving her, going back to a life that felt like a slow suffocation, felt unbearable. "What is his name?" I asked. She smiled. "Everyone calls him Mike. His Thai name is Somchai, but with foreigners, he uses Mike. Easier to remember. Can you arrange a meeting?" She nodded and picked up her phone. I met Somchai Ratanaporn 3 days later at a coffee shop near Soi Buakau. The choice of location was significant, though I did not realize it at first. Meeting in a coffee shop rather than an office made him seem accessible, approachable. Not some bureaucrat hiding behind a desk, but a helpful professional willing to meet potential clients in comfortable, neutral territory. He was 38 years old, well-dressed in pressed slacks and a blue button-down shirt, with the confident handshake of a man accustomed to being trusted. His English was good, not perfect, but substantially better than most Thais I had encountered. He had clearly practiced. "Mr. Gerald," he said, smiling warmly, "Kun Dao has told me about your situation. Please, sit. Let me explain how I can help you." We ordered coffee. He insisted on paying. Another small gesture designed to build rapport, to create a sense of obligation, to position himself as generous and trustworthy. He explained his background. Former immigration officer, he said, gesturing vaguely at his past. 10 years with the department. Left to start a private consultancy because he could help more people this way. Still maintained relationships with colleagues inside the system. Knew how things really worked, beyond what the official websites explained. He told me that many foreigners found the visa process confusing and overwhelming. That was where he came in. For a reasonable fee, he handled everything: paperwork, appointments, the relationships that made things move faster. I asked about the requirements: the 800,000 baht, the income verification, the documents that needed to be prepared in America before entry. He smiled and leaned back in his chair. Those requirements, he said, they are for people who do not know the right people. For my special clients, we can work around them. My contacts understand that not everyone has that kind of money sitting in a bank. There are ways to demonstrate financial stability without jumping through all the official hoops. My internal alarm bells were ringing louder now, but I kept my face neutral. Interested, hopeful. How much? I asked. He pulled out a small notebook and wrote some numbers. 85,000 baht total, he said. Roughly $2,400. Payable in installments. 35,000 up front to begin processing. 30,000 when the paperwork is submitted. 20,000 when the visa is approved. It was a lot of money, but not outrageous, not compared to what I imagined lawyers and official channels would cost. And if it meant staying in Thailand, staying with Tao, building the life we had started to imagine together, I will need to think about it, I said. Of course, he replied smoothly. Take your time. But remember, your visa expires soon. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to arrange things properly. He gave me his business card, his line contact information, his phone number. Call me when you are ready, he said. I am here to help. I walked back to my hotel with the business card in my pocket, turning everything over in my mind. That evening, I sat on my balcony with my laptop and spent 3 hours researching the OA retirement visa, the official requirements, the actual procedures, the questions that anyone legitimately working in visa consultancy should be able to answer. Then I composed a list of those questions. Technical questions, procedural questions, questions that would separate someone who genuinely understood the system from someone who was making things up as he went along. I was going to test Somchai Ratanaporn. And depending on how he answered, I was going to make a decision that would shape everything that followed. I met Somchai again 2 days later, this time at his office. The office was in a small building near Swai Buakau, up a narrow staircase that smelled faintly of mildew. The space itself was cramped but professional looking. A desk, 2 chairs for clients, walls covered with framed certificates and photographs. Somchai standing next to various Thai officials, shaking hands, smiling for cameras. Most of these photographs, I would later learn, had been purchased from a print shop that specialized in creating fake credentials for scammers. The certificates were equally meaningless, impressive-looking documents that conferred no actual authority. But I did not know that yet, not for certain. I asked my questions. I asked about the specific documents required for an OA visa application. He gave vague answers about forms that would be handled internally. I asked about the medical examination requirements, which diseases would disqualify an applicant. He could not name them, said his contacts handled that part. I asked about the police background check, how it was conducted, what agency was responsible. He said something about connections at the Ministry of Interior that made no procedural sense. I asked about the timeline for processing, the specific steps the application would go through. He spoke in generalities about expedited channels and priority handling. Every answer was wrong. Not completely wrong, not obviously fabricated, but wrong in the small details that someone who actually understood the system would have gotten right. I had worked fraud cases for 8 years. I knew when someone was performing knowledge they did not actually possess. Somchai was performing. This man was a con artist. And yet, standing in that cramped office with its fake certificates and purchased photographs, I made a decision that might sound insane. I decided to pay him anyway. Here is what Somchai did not know about me. He saw a 61-year-old retired postal worker. Lonely, desperate, not particularly sophisticated. The kind of mark who would hand over money in installments, each payment building the sunk cost that would make him reluctant to walk away, each payment drawing him deeper into a trap that would close completely only when there was nothing left to extract. Somchai had done this many times before. He knew the pattern. He knew how to read marks. He knew that men like me, men who had found something that felt like love in a foreign country, would do almost anything to protect that feeling. What he did not see was 8 years of fraud investigation experience. He did not see the hundreds of cases I had worked, the package thieves and the embezzlers and the mail tamperers, the patterns of deception I had learned to recognize, like a physician learns to recognize symptoms. He did not see the instinct, honed over decades, that something about this situation was fundamentally wrong. But here was the thing, Somchai also did not understand. I had already decided that walking away and reporting the scam would accomplish nothing. Oh, I could file a complaint. I could go to the tourist police and describe a man who called himself Mike, who ran an office near Sui Buakau, who promised visas through back channels. They would nod sympathetically. They might take notes. And then my complaint would disappear into a filing cabinet while Somchai packed up his certificates and photographs and moved his operation to another street. I had seen it happen in my own career. Small-time fraudsters who stayed one step ahead of consequences because their crimes were not dramatic enough to warrant serious resources, who preyed on people too embarrassed to make a fuss, who depended on the shame of their victims to stay invisible. If I wanted to actually stop Somchai, I would need more than a complaint. I would need evidence. Real evidence. Documented evidence. The kind of evidence that would make it impossible for authorities to ignore. The kind of evidence that would warn other potential victims. The kind of evidence that would shine a light so bright on this operation that Somchai could not simply vanish into another neighborhood. So I made a decision that might sound crazy. I decided to become the perfect Mark. I would pay Somchai's fees. I would follow his instructions. I would be grateful and trusting and exactly as naive as he expected me to be. But I would document everything. Every receipt, every message, every conversation, every small detail that might seem insignificant but would add up to an undeniable pattern. I would build a case against Somchai Ratanaporn using the same skills I had used for 8 years in the Office of Inspector General. And when I had enough, I would burn his entire operation to the ground. From that moment forward, I treated every interaction with Somchai as an evidence collection opportunity. When I returned to his office to pay the first installment, I arrived with my phone in my shirt pocket, the voice memo app running. The audio quality would not be perfect, but it would be good enough. I handed over 35,000 baht in cash. I counted the bills slowly, giving the audio recording time to capture the transaction. Somchai gave me a receipt, handwritten on a small piece of paper with his signature at the bottom. I photographed the receipt immediately when I returned to my hotel. Front and back, close up on the signature. Wide shot showing the paper against a neutral background. Multiple angles, multiple lighting conditions. The way I had been trained to document physical evidence. I saved copies to my phone, to my email, to a cloud storage service. Redundancy. Backups. The paranoid habits of someone who understood that evidence could be lost or destroyed. Over the following days, Somchai contacted me through Line with updates on my visa application. Each message, I screenshotted immediately. Good news, Mr. Gerald. The initial paperwork has been submitted. Screenshot. Saved. Backed up. My contact says everything is progressing well. We should have preliminary approval within a week. Screenshot. Saved. Backed up. He sent photographs, documents that appeared to be official forms with my name typed on them, stamps and signatures that looked authentic. A short video, just 15 seconds, showing what appeared to be someone's hand-sliding papers under a window at what could have been an immigration office. I saved everything. When it was time to pay the second installment, I met Somchai at the coffee shop again. 30,000 baht. Another handwritten receipt. Another recorded conversation in which I asked questions about the process and received answers that demonstrated his ignorance. The sunk cost psychology was working exactly as Somchai intended. Except, instead of making me reluctant to question the scam, it was making me more determined to see it through to the end. I had invested time and money into building this case. I was not about to walk away before I had everything I needed. 3 days before my original visa exemption was set to expire, Somchai called me with concern in his voice. The call came in the evening. I was sitting on my hotel balcony, watching the street below, when my phone rang. Mr. Gerald, we have a problem. I started a new voice recording before I said anything. What kind of problem? I asked. His voice was carefully calibrated, worried but not panicked, serious but not hopeless. The tone of a man delivering bad news that could, with effort and sacrifice, be overcome. A new supervisor has started at immigration. He is asking questions about certain applications, scrutinizing things that would normally pass without examination. I let him continue. My contact is worried. He says, "We need to take care of this situation before your visa can be processed. Otherwise, everything we have done will be for nothing. You could become an overstayer. You could be banned from Thailand." "How much?" I asked. He paused, drawing out the moment. "Building tension, 45,000 baht. I know it is more than we originally discussed, but without this payment, all the money you have already invested will be lost. Everything we have worked for." I made the appropriate sounds of distress. Let him think I was wrestling with the decision. In reality, I was cataloging this new data point: the escalation, the manufactured crisis, the additional extraction. "When can you have the money?" Somchai asked. "Tomorrow," I said. The next afternoon, I withdrew 45,000 baht from an ATM. Not just any ATM, the specific ATM that Somchai had recommended I use for all my withdrawals. He had mentioned it casually early in our relationship. "There is a good machine near the mall. No extra fees for foreign cards." I always tell my clients to use that one. I had noted the location. Noted that he always recommended the same 2 or 3 machines. Filed this information away as potentially significant. Later, when I was researching the broader scam ecosystem in Pattaya, I would learn that certain ATMs were indeed owned or operated by people connected to fraud networks. Another layer of profit extraction. Another way to squeeze a few extra dollars from every victim. I met Somchai at his office and handed over the final payment, 45,000 baht in cash. He gave me another handwritten receipt. He smiled and shook my hand with the warmth of a man who believed he had successfully completed a transaction. "Everything will be resolved now," he said. "Go to the immigration office in 2 days and ask for your visa. Everything has been arranged. Just give them your passport and your name. My contact will make sure everything is in order." I thanked him. I told him how relieved I was, how grateful, how much this meant to me and my future in Thailand. I played the grateful mark all the way down the narrow staircase and out into the afternoon sun. Then I walked to a quiet coffee shop, sat down with my laptop, and spent 3 hours organizing every piece of evidence I had collected over the past 3 weeks. Photographs of receipts, audio recordings of conversations, screenshots of line messages, documentation of ATM locations, notes on every factual error Somchai had made when answering my questions about the visa process. I compiled everything into a single folder, made backups, prepared a timeline that showed the clear pattern of extraction and deception. And then I waited. 2 days later, I would walk into the Pattaya immigration office and discover what I had known all along would be true. The immigration office was crowded when I arrived at 9 in the morning. Tourists and expats and workers, all of them waiting in various lines, filling out forms, checking their phones, existing in that particular state of bureaucratic limbo that is universal to government offices everywhere in the world. I took a number, waited 45 minutes. When my turn came, I approached the window and presented my passport to the officer, a woman in her 30s with tired eyes and efficient movements. "I am here to collect my retirement visa," I said. "My agent arranged everything. He said it would be ready today." She typed something into her computer, frowned at the screen, typed again. "I am sorry, sir. I do not have any record of a visa application in your name." I had known this would happen. I had expected it from the moment I first shook Somchai's hand in that coffee shop. But I played the role. I let distress show on my face. "That cannot be right," I said. "My agent submitted everything more than 2 weeks ago. He showed me photographs of the documents. He told me to come here today." "What is your agent's name?" she asked. "Somchai Ratanaporn. He goes by Mike with foreign clients." She typed the name, shook her head. "We have no record of anyone by that name working with this office. We have no pending applications in your name. Whatever this person told you, sir, it was not true." I showed her the handwritten receipts. I described Somchai's office, its location, its appearance. I gave her every detail I could, watching her expression shift from bureaucratic patience to something that looked almost like pity. "Sir," she said carefully, "I think you have been the victim of a scam. This is not uncommon. There are people in Pattaya who take money from foreigners and promise visa services they cannot deliver. I am very sorry." I thanked her for her time, asked if there was anything she could do. She gave me a pamphlet about visa requirements and suggested I contact the tourist police if I wanted to file a report. I walked out of the immigration office into the blazing Pattaya morning. I pulled out my phone and called Somchai's number. It went straight to a generic voicemail message. The kind of voicemail that comes standard with a prepaid SIM card purchased anonymously from any 7-Eleven. I tried again. Same result. I opened line and sent him a message. The message showed as delivered, but not read. I waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes. No response. I got on a bot bus and rode to Soy Buakaw. Walked up the narrow staircase to the building where Somchai's office had been. The sign on the door was different. A nail salon. Pink letters on a white background. Music playing inside, something soft and Thai. I stepped through the door and found myself in a small room filled with the chemical smell of nail polish. A woman looked up from behind a counter, surprised to see an elderly Western man in her establishment. I asked her, in my broken Thai supplemented by English, about the visa agency that used to be in this space. She shook her head. Spoke in Thai I could not follow. Then switched to limited English. No visa. Only nail. 3 months. Before empty. She had been renting this space for 3 months. Before that, according to her, the unit had been vacant. Somchai's office had been temporary, a stage set, erected for the performance of legitimacy, and then struck when the show was over. I stood on the street outside the nail salon for a long moment, processing, confirming what I had known intellectually but was now experiencing viscerally. The scam was complete. 145,000 baht had been extracted. The scammer had vanished. The office had never really existed in any permanent sense. If I had been anyone else, this would have been the ending. Another retired American conned in Thailand. Too embarrassed to make a fuss. Too hopeless to pursue justice. Just another data point in a business model built entirely on shame and silence. But I was not anyone else. I took out my phone, opened my evidence folder, and began preparing for the next phase. My first stop was the tourist police station near Beach Road. The building was modest, a single-story structure with a sign in Thai and English. I walked in with a folder full of printed documents and a phone full of digital evidence. The officer who greeted me, a young man named Somwang who spoke excellent English, was polite but clearly skeptical. Visa scams were common. Most victims came in with nothing but a story and vague descriptions. The cases almost never went anywhere. I understand, I told him, but I think you will want to see what I have. I opened my folder. His expression changed as I walked him through the evidence. The photographs of receipts, showing the progression of payments. The screenshots of line messages, documenting every false promise. The audio recordings of our conversations, capturing Somchai's voice making claims that were demonstrably untrue. You recorded the conversations? Officer Somwang asked. I spent 8 years investigating fraud for the United States government, I said. This is what I do. He excused himself, came back with a senior officer, an older man with the bearing of someone who had seen everything Pattaya had to offer. I started my presentation again from the beginning. When I played one of the audio recordings, both officers leaned forward to listen. By the end of the hour, they were treating my complaint as something more than routine. The senior officer explained that they would forward my evidence to the fraud investigation unit, that they would make inquiries about Somchai Ratnaporn, that they could not promise anything, but that this was more substantial documentation than they typically received. I thanked them and moved on to my next stop, the Thai Immigration Bureau's Anti-Fraud Division. A longer trip, more bureaucracy, more forms to fill out, but I filed a report there too, with copies of all my evidence. Then I contacted the United States Embassy in Bangkok, not because I expected them to investigate a Thai fraud case, but because I wanted an official record on file with American authorities. Another data point, another document that might matter if this case ever went anywhere. But I knew the reality. Thai courts move slowly. Fraud cases against local criminals, especially ones targeting foreign tourists, rarely resulted in prosecution. Somchai had probably already relocated to Chiang Mai or Phuket or some other city with a steady supply of lonely retirees desperate to stay. The system was not going to stop him, so I decided to do something else. 3 days after filing my official reports, I sat down at my laptop in my hotel room and wrote out the entire story. Every detail, every payment, every lie Somchai had told me, every red flag I had noticed, every piece of evidence I had collected. I wrote it as a warning. A detailed, documented warning for anyone considering using an unofficial visa agent in Thailand. Then I did something that Somchai, and every scammer like him, depends on victims never doing. I posted it publicly, with my real name, with photographs of Somchai, with the address of his former office and the locations of the ATMs he recommended. I chose 3 major Thailand expat forums, communities where retirees and long-term visitors gathered to share information, ask questions, plan their lives abroad. Thousands of potential victims reading posts every day. I laid out everything, including my own initial vulnerability, for anyone to read. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 48 hours, my post had been viewed over 10,000 times. Dozens of comments offered support, asked questions, thanked me for the warning. Within a week, 4 other victims had come forward. Their stories were nearly identical to mine. They had met Somchai through girlfriends or acquaintances. They had paid similar amounts in similar installments. They had received the same progression of fake updates and manufactured complications. They had all ended up at immigration offices with no record of any application. One man, a retired teacher from Canada, had lost nearly 200,000 baht. He had been too ashamed to tell anyone, had been trying to borrow money to continue paying Somchai in the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, the visa might still come through. Another victim, an engineer from Australia, had nearly sold his car to make a final payment that Somchai had requested before the whole operation vanished. The forum posts spread, were copied to other communities, shared on social media. Within 2 weeks, Somchai's photograph and techniques were known to thousands of potential future victims throughout the Pattaya expat community. I received dozens of private messages. Some were from people thanking me for the warning. Others were from people who recognized Somchai from their own experiences but had never realized they were not alone. A few were from people actively in the middle of dealing with someone matching Somchai's description, people who read my post just in time to pull out before losing more money. One message stood out. A man in his late 60s, a retired accountant from Oregon, wrote to tell me that he had been about to pay Somchai a final installment of 80,000 baht when he happened to read my post on an expat forum. He had already lost 60,000 baht, but my warning had saved him from losing the rest. I saw your post, he wrote, and I felt like I was reading about my own life. The same office, the same excuses, the same promises. I was so ashamed that I had been fooled. But seeing that it happened to someone else, someone who used to investigate fraud for a living, made me realize that I was not stupid. I was just targeted by professionals. Thank you for having the courage to put your story out there, he wrote. You saved me $1,200. But more than that, you saved me from hating myself. That message made everything worth it. There was one final piece of unfinished business. Dao. I had been avoiding her since the scam collapsed, partly because I was consumed with filing reports and writing posts and responding to other victims, partly because I was dreading the conversation we needed to have. I finally called her a week after my forum posts went viral in the expat community. Gerald, she said when she answered, where have you been? I have been so worried. Are you okay? I asked her to meet me. Somewhere public. Not the massage parlor. Not my hotel. A neutral space where I could watch her reactions without the intimacy we had built interfering. We sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant on a side street off 2nd Road. The same restaurant, I realized, where we had first eaten together all those weeks ago. I told her everything. The scam, the evidence, the reports I had filed, the posts I had made that had gone viral across expat forums throughout Thailand. She listened with widening eyes. When I finished, she was crying. Gerald, I did not know. I swear to you on my daughter's life, I did not know. My friend told me Mike was a good man. She said her boyfriend got visa through him with no problems. I was just trying to help you stay in Thailand. To stay with me. I studied her face, looking for tells, for the micro-expressions that might reveal deception beneath the tears. 8 years of fraud investigation had taught me to read people, to notice the small things, the eye movements that suggest rehearsed responses, the timing that feels performed rather than genuine. I could not tell. The truth was, I could not be certain whether Dao was a victim of the scam herself, innocently passing along a recommendation from a friend who had deceived her, or whether she was part of the network. Whether she had received a finder's fee for delivering me to Somchai, whether her tears were real or performance. What I knew from my research was that scammers like Somchai often worked with networks of local contacts, bar girls, massage workers, Anyone in a position to identify potential marks and build relationships that could be exploited. The referral system was a key part of how these operations functioned. Had Dao been part of that system? Or was she exactly what she appeared to be? A woman who had genuinely cared for me and had simply tried to help with information she believed was accurate. I will never know for certain. What I do know is that our relationship did not survive the uncertainty. Every time I looked at her after that conversation, I wondered, and she could see me wondering. The trust had been damaged too badly. Even if she was innocent, the suspicion between us had become a presence in every room we occupied together. We said goodbye a few days later. She wished me well. I wished her the same, and that was the end of whatever we had been building. I did a proper visa run to Vientiane, Laos, took a flight to the capital, spent a night in a hotel near the Mekong River, walked to the Thai embassy in the morning, and applied for a standard 60-day tourist visa. The process was straightforward. Fill out a form, provide photographs, pay a fee, wait 24 hours, receive a visa stamped into my passport, legally obtained, officially recognized. No back channels, no mysterious contacts, no handwritten receipts from offices that did not exist. I returned to Pattaya for a few more weeks, wrapped up the loose ends of my abbreviated expat life, said goodbye to Kun Noi at the coffee shop, to Jim at the Oasis restaurant, to the woman at the laundry service who had patiently corrected my Thai pronunciation. Then I went home. I landed in Tucson in January of 2023. The desert stretched flat and brown under a winter sun, the same landscape I had looked at for decades without really seeing it. My apartment was exactly as I had left it, empty, beige, the microwave clock still blinking 12:00. Nothing had changed, except me. It has been 2 years since I returned from Thailand. I still live in Tucson, still collect my pension of $4,200 every month, still eat at Rosie's Diner 3 times a week where Maria brings my patty melt without me having to order. But something is different now. I volunteer at the Pima County Senior Center teaching a monthly workshop on fraud prevention. I show retirees how to recognize scam emails and phone calls and online schemes. I explain the psychological techniques that predators use to exploit loneliness and isolation and the desire to matter. I tell them my own story, the whole thing, Thailand and Dao and Somchai and the 145,000 baht I spent to build a case against a con artist. That always gets their attention. If a former fraud investigator can be targeted, I tell them, then anyone can be targeted. Then I walk them through the warning signs, the too good to be true solutions, the cash payments, the urgency and pressure, the complications that require more money, the romantic partners who conveniently know exactly the right person to solve your problems. The workshop is not large, usually 15 or 20 people, but every session, at least one person comes up to me afterward and tells me that something I said resonated, that they have been approached by someone with a similar pitch, that they almost gave money to an online acquaintance, that hearing my story made them realize they need to be more careful. Those conversations keep me going. I talk to my kids more often now, not because the experience in Thailand magically fixed 2 decades of damaged relationships, but because I made a conscious decision to try harder. I call Daniel every week. I text Sophie photographs of Arizona sunsets. I tell them I love them, even when the words feel awkward coming out of my mouth. They are starting to respond. Slowly, carefully. The way you approach a dog that has bitten you before, testing whether it is safe this time. But it is something. It is more than I had before. I still think about Dao sometimes. I wonder if any of what we had was real. I wonder if she is still working at Healing Hands, still steering lonely foreigners toward men like Somchai. I wonder if she ever thinks about me. I wonder if I was wrong about her. If she really was innocent. If I destroyed something genuine because I could not trust my own judgment anymore. I will probably never know the answers, and I have made peace with that uncertainty. Peace is perhaps too strong a word. I have learned to live with not knowing. What I do know is this. I went to Thailand looking for something that was missing from my life. I thought I might find it in beautiful beaches and friendly smiles, and a woman who made me feel special after years of feeling invisible. What I found instead was a scam. A con artist who saw my loneliness and exploited it systematically. And eventually, in the wreckage of everything I thought I was building, I found something unexpected. A purpose. I lost 145,000 baht, roughly $4,100. It was not nothing. It hurt. It still hurts sometimes when I think about it too long. But the money I lost might have saved other people from losing more. The story I told, publicly, and with my real name attached, warned thousands of potential victims. The evidence I gathered helped other people come forward with their own experiences. I turned my victimization into a weapon against the people who prey on vulnerability. If you are watching this and you have been scammed, please know that you are not alone. Please know that reporting what happened is not shameful. Every report makes it harder for the next victim to be found. Every story shared is a light shining into darkness. And if you are watching this and you are considering moving to a foreign country to escape loneliness, please hear me when I say this. The loneliness will follow you unless you address it at the source. No country, no relationship, no beautiful beach or friendly smile will fix what is broken inside. You have to do that work yourself. Wherever you are, you have to build real connections in your own community. You have to find ways to matter that do not depend on your wallet. I am Gerald Whitmore. I am 63 years old. I am a retired postal supervisor, a former fraud investigator, and yes, a scam victim. But I am also someone who fought back, someone who documented everything, someone who refused to let shame keep me silent. And if my story helps even one person avoid the mistakes I made, then every baht I lost, every moment of humiliation and doubt and regret was worth it. If you have been affected by a story like this, or if you want to share your own experience, please leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel for more true crime and love scam documentaries. These stories need to be told. The more people who understand how these operations work, the harder it becomes for scammers to find new victims. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And please, take care of yourselves out there. The world is full of people who genuinely want to help you, but it is also full of people who want to help themselves to everything you have. Learn to tell the difference before it costs you more than money.